Welcome back to Blurred Summits. Today, we're talking about self-talk. What is self-talk? The positives versus the negatives of self-talk, and long-term and short-term techniques of improving self-talk.
Yes, sir.
So, Abdul, since self-talk is this weird term, do you want to let them know what that actually means?
Yeah. So self-talk, put very simply, is any statement or thought about the self, right? Everyone does it, but not everyone is aware of it. So self-talk is one of those things, you do it whether you like it or not. So you have to begin getting, consciously aware about what you are actually saying.
Yeah, because
right?
sometimes you're subconsciously saying stuff to yourself without even realizing it, right? Like You're just kind of doing your own thing.
Yeah. 100%.
But with this, if you actually acknowledge it, you can then use it to turn it into positives more over than negatives.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's what you want to do, because if you let it linger, generally speaking, if we leave our mind to wander, it's going to wander in a negative direction.
It's just easier to think in that direction,
exactly.
Right?
So what we want to do is be conscious of those thoughts and those statements we're having about ourselves, so that we can begin to change those and improve our self-talk. There's two kinds of self-talk that are really thought about, put very simply, as you can imagine. There's positive self-talk and negative self-talk. Very, very simple.
Yep.
Right? And so what is positive self-talk? Positive self-talk are statements where you increase yourself in confidence. You say things like, I can make it, where you psych yourself up. Maybe just before you do something, get hyped up, you get energetic, you get the blood flowing in your body. It can be instructional, so you talk about the technique that you're going to go through. It can be anxiety control. You can use self-talk to calm yourself down. And it could just be, outright good vibes.
That's what it is, right? Just get yourself on the good waves. Just ride those waves of positivity.
Absolutely.
And then with kind of the negative side of things, some of the negative things with self-talk is worry. So like thinking I won't be right, and I might embarrass myself, like group talk, like going into a big group of people you don't know. Worry, it's like, I'm going to mess this up. Something's going to go wrong. Disengagement. So like I can't go on anymore. Like you're doing a new challenge, studying whatever. I can't do this. I don't know any of this stuff. So then you give up on it. Somatic fatigue. So repeating yourself that you are tired, which then makes yourself more tired.
Exactly.
So you're tricking your mind into thinking you're tired. It could be tricking your mind into thinking you're hungry when you're not. It could be tricking yourself to be like, I'm not good enough to do this thing.
Yeah, and if you repeat it enough times, it'll become true.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that shows why you could flip those into positives, right? That shows the ability to flip them back and forth.
Exactly, absolutely. Yeah, and like at the end of the day, if you take nothing away from this podcast, the biggest thing to remember is your job when you're thinking about self-talk and what am I actually saying to myself and what's coming out of my mouth, is you want to maximize your positive self-talk and minimize your negative self-talk. That's as much as it really comes down to, right?
Yeah, it's just catching yourself when you're in the negatives and changing that narrative so then it's positive.
Exactly.
Because like everything's got those two sides, right? You can think, oh, I'm not good enough to do this thing, or you can flip that to be like, I can do this. It's a challenge, but I can do this. I can push myself to get better at this task or whatever it is to then be able to excel at it, right?
100%.
So what are some kind of long-term techniques of improving self-talk?
Yeah, so the big one is thought stopping. And thought stopping is the process whereby you realize these, conscious words that you're saying. What are the words that are actually coming out of your mouth? If you realize you say, I'm not good at math. Right? A lot of people, they'll say, man, I did bad on this test. I'm not good at math. That is self-talk.
I'm innately bad at math.
I can't get better. I remember a really good example back in high school. We just finished this really hard math exam, and this guy comes up to me and he's like, man, he didn't do that well on the test. And he goes, bro, I studied so hard for this exam and I still did so bad.
Was this Calc or Math 30-1?
No, this is Math 30-1. This is, yeah. And he was like, I did so bad on this exam, so I'm just not going to study anymore, bro. Like I studied so hard for this test and it just seems that math isn't for me and I can't do well in it. And that kind of self-talk reinforces it. So what you want to do is realize when you do have those phrases of I can't, I worry, I'm not good enough, that kind of stuff, and stop yourself right in the middle of your tracks. Just stop it and convert it into some sort of a positive perspective.
Like I can, I will, this is doable if I work hard.
Yeah.
Just turn it into, get it into,
It's
I guess,
possible.
turn it into that hustle mindset, right? Any of these negatives, you can turn it into, I just need to push myself to do it. I just need to complete this challenge.
Yeah.
Just need to grind it out, like the math one. That's what that is.
And the point isn't that just by saying it in a positive way, then all of a sudden it's going to become true. But that's how you want your subconscious beliefs to be in a way so that your conscious reality reflects that. So if your subconscious beliefs are always going to be negative, then the outcomes you're always going to get are going to be negative. So through thought stopping and ensuring that you don't engage in those negative words, then you're ensuring that your conscious and your real world outcomes are also positive as well.
Well, yeah, like if you think to yourself that I can do it, you're innately going to work harder. If you think I can't do this, then what? Then you're going to be like, why would I ever try then, right? Like there's no point in me putting all this effort in if I'm never going to do it. So by telling yourself, I can do it, I can do this, you're then motivating yourself to push yourself and putting in the extra work.
Exactly. Yeah, and this leads us into our second point about a technique is to change your perceptions from negative to positive, right? And reinforce those perspectives through self-talk. So when you face a challenge or you face a difficulty, try to figure out what is the positive within this. And sometimes it's really difficult and it really sucks. And sometimes we don't even get to see the positives till, months later when we can sort of settle down and all this kind of stuff. But try your hardest to figure out, how can I leverage this to become what I want to become and to do the things that I want to do? Right?
Yeah, I think we've been talking about that a lot, right? It's flipping the narrative, flipping the script. Being like, looking at it going down, you got to look at a way where you can use it to pick yourself up. Like some people, they can just do this naturally, right? Without thinking. But you can train yourself to be like that. It's like the muscle thing we've been talking about, right? Like your brain is a muscle.
Exactly.
So train that muscle to be like, anytime it starts moving in the wrong direction or it's struggling to pull something up, just wake it up, turn it on, and it'll be able to flex. And then do the rep, or in this case, change that thought into a positive.
100%. And the third thing, and this is something that's really overlooked, is self-feedback. So what is self-feedback? There is nobody in the world who knows you as well as you know yourself. Undeniably, no coach, no parent, no teacher is going to know you to the nuances that you know yourself. So realizing that you know yourself the best, you need to be sometimes the coach for yourself. You need to be the teacher for yourself and realize that these things and these thoughts, nobody else is going to know them. So I need to be the one who treat yourself like your own student, like you're a student that you're teaching, and use that to provide yourself with feedback and combine that with your self-talk to reinforce positive behavior.
Like you are your own master.
Yeah.
Because like you know what you need to
about yourself.
You know what you know about yourself, and you know what needs to be done, right? You know what's
More
right.
than
You know what's
anyone else.
positive and negative, right?
100%.
So you just need to be like, okay, I just need to do it, right? Like the hard part is telling yourself, hey, this is bad.
Yeah.
This isn't good enough. Like we'll go sports examples, right? With like something like golf. Just ones with like individual sports are easy with any of these mental things. Where it's like you walk over something, you're like, why isn't this working? Why am I hitting it bad? Doing all these other things. You know in your mind some of the things that you've been messing up with, not focused, thinking it's going to be bad, no kind of excitement behind any of it, right? So you'd be like, just be happy, you're out here, be loose, have good vibes, and usually it'll work well, right? So you just got to flip your switch in your head and turn it and coach yourself in the right direction.
Absolutely. And so here we are going to end off sort of with 6 rules for effective self-talk, right? So we're talking about these positive phrases and these different kinds of things that we can say, but what makes good self-talk from bad self-talk? And there are some very definitive answers. The first of which, and possibly the most important, is keep the phrases short and specific. You don't want the self-talk to be a whole speech that you're giving yourself, right? Sometimes you don't want to be standing in front of a mirror giving yourself a 20-minute speech about a positive self-talk and all this kind of stuff. You want it to be short and specific. Make it specific to the task at hand and make it short. Make it something that you can reinforce easily.
Well, if you do it long, it loses its value, right? Like if you're doing them, it's like, I can do this.
And you'll forget it.
I'm good enough. I can do this. Go do it. Like just maybe 1, 2, or 3 quick little points.
Exactly.
Like, and then those are things you can keep in your head while you're doing it, right? You can't keep a whole 20-minute rant in your head while you're doing a task.
And you want to be able to repeat it. So by
Exactly.
having it small, then you're able to repeat those things way more often versus you're not going to memorize a 20-minute speech, a 10-minute speech, even a 5-minute speech. That's way, way too long.
Yeah, well, think like if you're doing like a plank, right? Trying to hold a plank as long as you can. You think I can do it. Just keep going longer. And what's a third one you could do with that? Keep fighting. You just keep repeating those three things over and over and over again in your head to keep you there longer, right? If it was like this long speech, then it's like you can't really repeat that, right? You say it beforehand and then you go do it, and then the effects of that speech just dissipate in the first minute.
Yeah.
When you have something you can repeat, like you were saying, the value there's so much higher, right? Because you can keep using it, sustaining it the whole time you're through whatever exercise you're doing.
Yeah, and you won't forget it.
Yeah,
Jeez.
exactly.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Next thing is another effective rule for self-talk is you want to make sure the phrases are in the first person and in the present tense. The reason is that you don't want to dissociate from your self-talk. You don't want to say, Abdul is going to do this, or we are going to do this. You want to say, I am going to do this. I am this.
Or is it,
I am capable.
Well, I am going to is future tense.
Or sorry, yeah.
I can do this. I will
am.
do, or I have
am
done, or,
good.
Yeah,
Right?
I am good. I can do this.
Exactly.
I am successful. I am good enough.
Exactly.
To say in this very moment, right? Because in future moment, it's like I'm building up to it, but I'm not there. Past tense, it's I have done that, right? Like I've been good. I've been smart. It's like, where am I now? You're assuming you're down this hill, right?
Exactly.
And in future tense, you're again assuming you're at the bottom but climbing.
Exactly.
Assume you're on the peak when you're doing this stuff, right?
Yeah, you're 100% right. You want to be in the present tense all the time.
Yeah, because tenses make you feel like you're at a different point than where you are going to be. So put yourself on that peak.
Absolutely. The next thing is that you want to construct positive phrases in advance, right? Set up a series of phrases and positive self-talk, mantras almost that you can use, and that you can use them throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month. And these can be for different areas. Let's say you're in sports, so you have maybe 3 or 4 phrases that you tell yourself when you're about to compete in a sport. These phrases might be different than when you are in an academic environment or you're going to school. But what you do want to do is try as best as you can to set up these phrases in advance, especially when you're not in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, when you're in a clear mind, kind of restful state, right?
Exactly.
Because you can plan out and prepare these for when you are stressed out or worried, right? Then they can just come to you. You don't have to think about them in the moment.
Absolutely.
Because as soon as you start thinking, your thoughts will go negative, usually, if you're in high-stress situations.
Exactly. Not 100% right. The next one is that you want to say them with meaning and attention, right? Don't be doing another task while you do them because they're going to have less impact, right? You want to step out. Let's say you are studying or you are working or you are teaching or playing a sport, whatever it might be. Step out of that moment consciously. You don't have to physically step out, but take a step back mentally and pause for a second and really mean the words that you're saying. Don't just say it in the middle of you're running a marathon, you're telling yourself these positive phrases, because if your mind is on a whole bunch of different things, then they're going to have less of an impact on you.
Well, yeah, I was actually going to think like running, like I was actually thinking that same thing, like running or whatever. I think you should be able to just pull yourself out of it, no? Like because if your body like is on autopilot, like think of someone like David Goggins running however long. His body's on autopilot at that point, right?
Yeah.
Then you should be able to pull your mind.
If your mind is disengaged, but I think there might be a discrepancy between this kind of self-talk and that kind of self-talk that you're talking about with David Goggins.
Well, it doesn't necessarily, but like think about like when you're running, do you zone out? Because I do.
Yeah.
Why don't you use that zone out to be your self-talk?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It could work.
Like I don't see why not, right? Because your body's doing its thing. You doing that's not taking away from your body.
That is very true. Yeah.
I mean, it might be different because that's usually on a treadmill, but I feel actually no. When I've ran out on the road, I can usually still do that.
Yeah.
Because usually it's just you get in that rhythm, right? You get in the rhythm, and then you can take your mind where you need to go.
Yeah, like I think if you are doing an activity when you are saying it, then it can give you that extra push of dopamine or energy that you might need to get through that task. But I think if you want to have a change in your belief system, right? Like a belief in yourself and your abilities, then you do want to be in a very calm state of mind when you are making these statements, because you don't want to associate it with anything except for who you are.
Well, yeah,
Right?
you trained it into your mind before, right? Like, what about when you're running? You're like, oh, I can't do this. Like that stuff's in your head, right? So you
Yeah.
still have to have the positive self-talk to flip that around.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it still has a place in any of that stuff, like during whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah. Good.
Like, think about that. Like, you know that, right? Like, when it's you've experienced that.
Yeah,
It's
but
like,
I think there's a big discrepancy between this kind of self-talk and the self-talk that you're talking about. There is a discrepancy. And
Yeah.
the self-talk that there are statements that we inherently believe about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And the self-talk in this tip here, it says, don't have things going on around you when you're saying it, is in your moments when the world is quiet around you. When you're there are those moments you're laying in bed, it's the middle of the night, the world is silent, the world is asleep right now, and now you have these thoughts. What are those thoughts? Are they positive or are they negative? In those moments, you want to shift. You want to shift your self-talk in those moments specifically, because those ones are the moments that really define who you are as a person, right? When you're working out, sometimes you might say, I'm a beast, I'm the king of the world, that kind of stuff, even though you don't believe that. So that self-talk is, I think, a little bit different than this kind of self-talk, or maybe that this specific tip talks about. But I definitely see what you're saying about when you're having those moments and you can re-switch up that self-talk. It is still self-talk.
Because if you stop and then you say that thing, or then you calm down, then you beat yourself up on it afterwards. Like, why did I stop? Like, what was I doing? Why I didn't do how far I wanted to go.
I think, there's definitely a place and a time for both of them.
Yeah, I think you have to use them both in unison, right? I guess not unison, tandem.
In tandem with
alternately,
each other.
depending on when. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the moment, you kind of have to pick and choose which one it is that you need. Sometimes you need to hype up self-talk, which is like with the physical activity, with the high adrenaline, with things like that. And then there's like the actual your self-worth self-talk.
Exactly.
Which in the quiet moments before these events, after these events, things like that.
Yeah.
Because it's always going on in your head all the time, right? Like, no matter what you're doing, there's thoughts, right? We talked about that on the previous episode.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I think you nailed it right there. And the next tip is, or rule for effective self-talk, is to speak kindly to yourself in normal life, right? When you are saying words out loud, make sure that those are good words. Make sure that you're not trashing yourself, you're putting yourself down all the time. There is a place for, the kinds of jokes like self-deprecating humor. A lot of comedians use that kind of thing, but you want to use that in very small doses. You don't want it to be too high, because if you continuously degrade yourself and you insult yourself, then you begin to decrease that self-worth.
Well, I think at a point there's an amount where, you get away with it, where it's clearly a joke, where you don't take it as take it for its self-worth or take it for any value, right? Which is, I'm doing it to get a good laugh. But then that laugh brings you the good self-worth with it. And then you think, how I'm funny, I'm hilarious.
Yeah, but the thing is, why are you hilarious? Because you suck.
Because I can think on my toes.
Your only worth right now, you're making people laugh. Your only worth is because you suck, because you're making fun of yourself, right? So it's a very slippery slope. It's a very, very slippery slope. You want to handle it with very careful attention into how much you're actually using it.
And the intent behind it too. Like, sometimes
Absolutely.
You never, like, if you're doing the self-deprecating, you never want to take it seriously, right?
Well, yeah, of course.
As soon as you do, you're like, then
you don't want to take it seriously. And even if you don't take it seriously, don't do it too often, because soon you'll start to believe those things.
Yeah,
right?
Your mind's
Speak
a powerful
kindly
thing. You can trick yourself.
Exactly, right? Speak kindly about yourself.
Just like how you can trick yourself to be positive.
Yeah.
That's the same
and
goes
you're
negative.
You're a funny guy without needing a self-deprecating joke, right? It's a lot of times maybe people think that the only way I can get people to like me or to laugh with me is if I'm insulting myself. No, don't do that, right? You're funny in other capacities.
It doesn't add that much. Like, the value it adds isn't worth the amount it takes away from you personally.
Right. That being said, rag on yourself, rag on your friends sometimes, but just be careful.
When you do it, make sure it's out lighthearted, nothing serious. Obviously,
make sure it's absolutely lighthearted.
And this last one here is, you want to repeat your phrases that you say often, write them down, and keep it with you if possible, right?
Yeah.
Because in some of these moments, I guess with this one, it's usually when it's kind of quiet. You can sometimes forget what you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
So holding on to it, that way if you're like, oh, I need like a boost. I'm saying some of these bad things in my head. You can pull it out, look at it, and read it to yourself, right?
Yeah.
And do what we were saying before. You trick your mind into flipping the switch on it, right?
Exactly. And a lot of the times, like you said earlier, the mind is very good at deceiving itself. So even if we believe that we're good at something, the mind might be able to trick us into thinking that we suck at it. So if you write something down and you maybe write it on a little sticky note and you keep it with you in your wallet or wherever it might be, then through doing that, you create a physical copy of that thing. You can't change that. Your mind can't trick the paper into changing the words that's on it, right?
Yeah.
Those words are staying the same.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, as long as you can have a moment where you're completely clear and write those down, then you should be set for forever, basically. As long as you can keep that paper on you.
Yeah. And even I even heard this thing. It's like write it down and keep it in a place that it's going to be safe. You know, your wallet with you and your jacket pocket, I don't know, somewhere where it's with you generally most of the time. You don't even have to look at it. You just need to have it with you. And they say like there's this subconscious connection
With the piece of paper.
with the piece of paper that just knowing, your mind knows that it's with you. Your mind knows that there is this thing, there is this belief that is physically incarnated saying that I am worthy or I am good at this thing.
This paper with the good vibes is with you. So then
the vibes
that paper
are always
is the
with
good
you. That's
vibes,
it.
bro.
The vibes are always with you.
Mind's tricky, bro, sometimes. It's insane what the mind can do to you.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's so important to be conscious of these thoughts, right? Like, if you don't think about it one moment, you just flip the switch, it goes the other way. So keeping on top of it, you can make sure that those vibes stay positive, that things are flowing in the right direction, and you're good, bro.
There you go. What was that one song you were saying with the positive vibes? What's
The
it
study
called?
one?
Yeah.
Stolen Dance? That one?
Was that the one that you mentioned? The one that you always listen to before your exams?
Yeah,
Give you
Stolen Dance by Milky Chance.
Stolen Dance by Milky Chance. Shout out to Milky Chance. I don't even know who that is. That's crazy. I heard the song. I actually didn't know it.
Yeah.
I thought I didn't know when he first
It's
said
a
it.
pretty big song.
I was like, whose song is this? Who is Milky Chance? That doesn't even make sense, but
It's good vibes, that's what
it is pretty good. It's a good song. Anyways, so to recap today's topic, we spoke about self-talk. There's positive and negative self-talk, and essentially what you want to try and do is maximize your positive self-talk and minimize your negative self-talk. Examples of negative self-talk is, I won't be right, I'm going to embarrass myself, I can't go anymore, I'm too tired. And examples of positive self-talk are, I can make it, I'm doing this right, I'm able to calm myself, I am capable and I am worthy. So keep these in the back of your mind and try to reinforce these throughout the day as much as you possibly can. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's podcast. If you would like to watch the full video podcast, you can catch us on YouTube. You can also catch the full audio podcast on Spotify, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pandora, and Amazon Music, as well as daily content on Instagram and TikTok. Be sure to reach out to us through DMs. We'd love to hear from you guys and get to know you guys even more. Thank you so much.